Hey friends, thanks for joining me for chapter 6. I'm hanging out outside today. So I got my toque on, got my jacket on, nice and warm and cozy. It's not winter anymore, but it's still a little cold. It's been raining lately. You ready to see what happens in chapter 6? Me too. It was raining hard when the children woke the following morning. Ben was sure they would not be going on a picnic in such weather. He predicted that the professor would cancel the whole thing. The professor phoned at midday, but only to confirm with Mrs. Potter that it was all right for the children to meet him at 2:30 that afternoon. By 2 o'clock, Lindy, Ben, and Tom looked as if they could attempt an expedition to the North Pole. They wore heavy sweaters and trousers tucked into thick rubber boots. Lindy had on a cape that she often wore when she walked to school. It was a very sensible covering because she could keep her hands dry inside, and her boots, too. Books, too. Who wears boots inside a cape? She wore a large sou'wester that came down so low on her head that only her nose and her chin were visible underneath it. It's a hat, by the way. Tom wore a duffel coat with the hood pulled up and a scarf, and Ben had on an old raincoat and an oilskin hat that his father used when he went fishing. Professor Savant was waiting for them on the porch when they arrived. He was wearing a most extraordinary outfit, long waterproof pants and a transparent plastic coat tied at the waist, which gave a balloon-like effect to the upper half of his body. He wore a peaked cap and sturdy, heavy brogues covered by plastic overshoes. He greeted the children with his customary enthusiasm. "Hello there," he yelled. "Isn't this just a marvelous day? I love the rain, don't you?" "How are we going to have a picnic?" asked Tom. You'll see. The professor disappeared behind the house, and a moment later reappeared pushing the oldest bicycle the children had ever seen. The handlebars were bent, spokes were missing, the seat was tilted at a ridiculous angle, and the whole contraption made a terrible squeaking sound. "I haven't ridden one of these things for quite a while. No, let me see." He attempted to swing a leg over the saddle. "Ha! This is going to be tricky." He tried again, this time successfully enough, at least to get his feet on the pedals. With fierce concentration, he began to wobble around the drive. "Just getting warmed up," he announced with a grin, at which point his trousers caught in the chain, and he came to a shuddering stop. "Oh, fiddlesticks," he said. The children giggled. "Mrs. Primrose," he yelled, "I need bicycle clips." He yanked the bike into an upright position. "Bicycle clips, sir? You don't have any." "Bother! What am I going to do?" "Tuck your trousers in your socks," Tom suggested. Good idea, but my socks are too short. My underwear is too long, and it would all get wet in the rain." The professor illustrated this by hitching up his trousers. The children had a glimpse of white long johns in his skinny legs, and a pair of startling red socks. "I do have these, sir, if you wouldn't mind wearing them." Mrs. Primrose put a hand in her apron pocket and shyly produced a pair of lavender garters. The professor raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. "Well," he said, "I haven't seen a pair of those in a long time. They'll do splendidly, Mrs. Primrose." He folded his trousers and put the garters over them. "I think you look very fetching." He hopped about in the rain to show them off. Mrs. Primrose pointed to his bicycle. "I do wish you wouldn't ride that thing, sir. It's lethal. Really it is." "Oh, nonsense, woman. I shall be perfectly all right. Well, come along, Potters. The afternoon will be over before we get started." Do you think Mrs. Primrose warned him for good reason? Let's see how he does. He climbed on the bicycle and began to wobble his way down the drive. The children hurriedly pedaled after him, calling goodbye to an anxious-looking Mrs. Primrose. It soon became apparent that not only was the professor's bike dangerous to ride, but the professor was a definite road hazard. He had a strong tendency to aim his bike at an object, a tree, a car, a pedestrian, people, and only on the last second would he swerve to avoid it. He turned corners sharply without so much as a hand signal, and the children were never certain what he would do next. They discovered that it was easier and safer if they rode a few yards behind him. The professor seemed to need most of the road for himself. Lindy was rather concerned. "Are you going to be all right?" she called. "Yes, Lindy, no cause for alarm. I'll get the hang of this thing in a while." They pedaled slowly through the outskirts of the town. The children liked the feel of the raindrops on their faces. The bicycle tires made a pleasant hissing sound on the wet road and sent up small fountains of spray. As they rode, the professor began to sing, "She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes." He had a terrible voice, but his enthusiasm was contagious. The children joined in. "You're not singing nearly loud enough," he cried. "I can't hear you at all." The children sang at the top of their voices. Fortunately, there was no traffic about, because now they were all bicycling in a haphazard way and laughing so much that half the time they weren't looking where they were going. The professor suddenly swung his bike off the road and onto a small track. "Where is this?" asked Tom as they bumped and jogged their way along. "This is where we have our picnic," he replied. He turned into an open field and braked to a halt in front of a dilapidated stone building. "What a funny house," said Lindy. "Who owns this place?" "Well, I do." The professor removed a picnic basket from his bicycle and led the way through the tall wet grass to a large door at the front of the building. "Ben, put a shoulder to this with me, would you? You too, Tom." The professor pushed hard against the heavy door. The boys helped him through. The boys stumbled through a cloud of dust into a high room as the door swung open. "What a great place," Ben declared. "I'm glad you like it," the professor said. "This old barn is all that remains of a farmhouse. I might restore the place one day. In the meantime, it seemed like a good spot to come and have a picnic." "Look, I found a horseshoe," Lindy cried excitedly. "Well, that's a lucky beginning. Now we'd better get started on a fire. Otherwise, it'll be too damp and cold in here. Boys, go to the back of the house. There should be plenty of dry kindling under the trees. Lindy, help me put this cloth down so that we can spread our picnic on it." It didn't take long to get things organized. Quite soon, everyone was sitting in the middle of the stone floor, around a crackling wood fire. The children were starving. Mrs. Primrose had packed all manners of goodies for them: sausage rolls and peanut butter sandwiches, a sponge cake with jam, and oatmeal cookies and bananas. There were milk and ginger ale to drink. "This is really terrific," said Tom, his cheeks rosy from the fire and his mouth full of cake. The professor pushed his plate away and leaned back on one elbow. "Tell me your favorite word. Somebody. Better still, tell me the 3 nicest words you can think of." "Yellow, sunshine, mother of pearl," Lindy said. "Splendid. What about you, Ben?" "Ooh, I'm going to have to work this one out. Acetylsalicylic? Oh, I don't know, that was a hard one." "What's that?" asked Tom. "It's what aspirin is made of, isn't it, Professor?" "Right, Ben. The chemical name for aspirin is acetylsalicylic acid." Oh, that one's a really hard one for me. That is a good word. It rolls off the tongue nicely. I think I need practice on that one. It might roll off the tongue for the professor, but it doesn't for Miss Russell. Tom said, "I've got the best